Hello, and welcome to this re-recording of my recap presentation. A special note about this recording, when I originally gave the presentation, it was live with some fairly active audience participation. And between that time and now, the original recording has been lost to the internet. So I'm going to redo the presentation with all of the things that I said that were in my prepared remarks, but without any of the interaction or questions that came up as part of that presentation. Surprisingly, the transcript is still available. So if you're looking to reference something that I said as part of that engagement with the audience, feel free to check out that transcript. So without any further ado, let's get into online instructors as TV personalities, how instructors apply multimedia design principles. So thank you for being here today. I am honored to be able to share some of the results of my recently completed doctoral dissertation. The focus today is on video design principles, what they are, how well they're being applied, and tips for how you can apply them. For those of you who may have seen my defense, some of this is going to be the same, but a good portion of it is new. So let's dig in. Online learning in higher education in the United States has been on a steady growth trend. And alongside that trajectory has been a rise in the use of video in online learning courses. This growth led me to wonder how well were faculty applying research-based video design principles. In the literature, the cognitive theory of multimedia learning states that the use of words and pictures together is a more effective way of learning than words alone or pictures alone. The theory identifies three types of cognitive load. Extraneous, which is the processing of extra information not related to the learning task. And your goal as a video creator is to get rid of elements that cause this type of cognitive load. The second one is essential, which is the processing or organizing of new information that must occur in the learner's brain and cannot be offloaded anywhere else. Your goal is to encourage or promote this type of cognitive load. And finally, you have germane, which is the sense-making portion of the processing, or in layman's terms, it's engagement in the learning. This is the very human component. Situated inside those three cognitive loads are a set of design principles that, when applied, have been shown to improve student learning outcomes. I've identified 11 here that we're going to touch on in today's presentation. To give you a little bit of context about where the data that I'll be referencing is coming from, I used a mixed methods explanatory sequential design to develop a case study focused on describing instructor implementation of the design principles in video that they created for use in their online courses. I collected data from three sources: a survey of 17 questions, which I then used to identify the 5 instructors who were best implementing the CTML design principles. I then interviewed those 5 instructors and collected a video artifact from each of them for analysis. The 11 CTML design principles were the codes during the qualitative analysis, which let me anchor the data in the theoretical framework and create opportunities to connect the data sets via triangulation. The setting was a large regional public university in the Mid-Atlantic that had over 900 full and part-time instructors, and they'd been engaged in online learning since 2010. I had a strong response rate. The average instructor who completed the survey had previously taught 13 online course sections and was teaching 2 course sections during the semester in which I collected data. As you can see with the table on the right, the conditions at this university led to 94.6% of instructors indicating they had some level of interest to teach their first online course. Now, 88% of the 131 courses in the survey data were using video. The average course had 23 videos, 9 of which were made by someone other than the instructor, and 14 of which were created by the instructor. I also had 10% of instructors who were not going to be making any video at all during the semester in which I collected data. Data from the survey indicated that on average, it took an instructor 1 hour and 48 minutes to create a single video. The most popular tools used were Camtasia, Kaltura, Zoom, and PowerPoint. However, PowerPoint use is likely underrepresented as lecture style was reported on 76% of the responses. And 3 of the 5 people that I interviewed did not report on the survey that they used PowerPoint. However, during interviews, they did discuss using it. I'd also like to point out that these tools were the ones that were available and supported by the university where this study took place, and that all 5 interviewees used a different combination of tools to create a video, which I interpret to mean that you can apply these principles that I'm going to discuss with just about any set of video creation tools. So let's get into those principles. Now you have some of that context. We're going to look at each principle individually. So the coherence principle is the idea that you include only those elements needed to meet the learning objective in a video. That means no extra elements, or in many instances, music. Now there are some exceptions to the use of music. It is appropriate when it is needed to meet the learning objective of the video. For example, teaching about harmony, you would include music demonstrating harmony. That would be a coherent use of music. But otherwise, you really don't want to add music for music's sake. With that understanding of the principle, it is now your turn. How many instructors reported that their best self-made instructional video did not have music? Or said another way, how many instructors applied the coherence principle for audio? And you will enter your percentage number guess as a number in the chat. So the answer is 90%. Another 10% reported some of the time, which was the lowest option of implementation you could pick. So this is really good implementation of this first part of the coherence principle. And the interviewees identified 2 main reasons why they did not use music in their videos, which you can see here on the screen. The key takeaway for you is that if you're new to instructional video creation, avoid music unless you need it for a specific instructional purpose. So coherence also has visual component to it. So again, I'm going to ask the question of the audience here. What percentage of the instructors in the survey reported that their video included extra visual elements? Now those guesses are in. Approximately 1 in 4 instructors were using extra visuals. So this one, not quite as good of an implementation as the other, but still pretty good. 3 out of 4 instructors keeping their visuals focused on the specifics of their video. Again, there were 2 themes that the interviewees identified as helping them apply this particular design principle. One was a focus on being a teacher instead of an entertainer and trying to keep communication concise and to the point to benefit their students. The use of an editing process to keep video focused also played an important role. Editing could take place before or after a recording, but the key idea is that these individuals engaged in a review of what they'd created and then made adjustments to ensure that the message was focused and to the point. I will say that most of the editing that the interviewees discussed was to remove items and elements. Now, one of the interviewees, I'll call him George, used this idea of formulas to help him stay focused and concise in his video communication. You see 2 examples of formulas that he used on the screen. The one on the left should be familiar, that 5-paragraph essay thing. And the one on the right, he uses for videos that he makes out in the real world. He calls them field videos, where if he's out and about and he sees something he can use to teach a concept in his class, he's going to pull out his cell phone, he's going to start filming himself, and he's going to follow that formula. So the key takeaway for you as someone who's going to create video is to use a review and editing process during your video creation with a goal of trying to remain concise and clear. And one way that can help you do that is to consider using a formula similar to what you see here. All right, second principle is signaling. And this is the idea when an instructor uses some form of highlighting for important information in a video. Now, signaling can take many forms, including outlining, underlining, color changes, shapes, vocal cues, highlighting, cursor movements, and finger pointing. And really any other type of change to draw viewer attention. So, what percentage of instructors applied the signaling principle in their best instructional video? And you see some examples from the actual video artifacts here on the screen. 52% said yes, and 47% said no. So it was about a half and half split. 24% said no via the Likert scale, where 76% said yes in one of the forms of the Likert scale. So depending on how I ask the question, you get a little bit of variation. I'd prefer to go with the 76% as it is a more detailed response. But still, you have 1 out of 4 instructors, again, not using signaling in their videos. So your key takeaway is to add in some signals, whether they be vocal cues, a pointing finger, shapes, colors. These things are relatively easy to do when you create a video. You just have to remember to do it. So how many of you like it when the person presenting reads the text on the slide back to the audience? This type of presentation style can feel awkward and uncomfortable. One of the reasons why is that your brain is trying to do 2 things at once that both use similar processing channels. And this brings us to our third principle, which is the redundancy principle. Because when text is presented on the screen only, it is not read aloud by the narrator. So you have either information is either going to be spoken by the narrator or presented on the screen, but you're not doing both at the same time. And I'd hope the reason for this is clear based on that previous slide. Now, how many instructors read aloud on-screen text in at least 30% or more of their best video? Again, time for the audience to take their guess, pick their percentage number. 55% of the sample were reading on-screen text in 30% or more of their video. In this instance, the interviewees provided explanations that helped explain this principle's application. As I mentioned, George creates field videos of himself out in the real world. That type of video doesn't have any text on screen, which makes it impossible for him to violate this principle. Hence the idea of that first item there, that visual design informs principle application. Now, Bertha, another interviewee, has a quote that helps explain both of the next 2 themes related to this principle. She said, "I don't read as many words off the screen as I used to. However, sometimes if it's one of those phrases that's up there that's powerful, I'll read it because I feel like it needs to be reinforced, not just by being there visually for the students, but by them hearing it spoken out loud." So that need to signal important information may be causing some of that additional redundant reading. Our next principle is called the spatial contiguity principle, and it's when you have related words and images close together in a video. Here are 2 examples from the video artifacts. On the left, you see a diagram with words very close to the particular aspects of the image that they're referring to and the way that they've structured those descriptions underneath the 4 examples. And on the right, you have a slide that's talking about word walls with a picture of word walls and some other aspects in relative close proximity to each other. So what percentage of instructors applied this spatial contiguity principle? Go ahead and take your percentage guess, and let's find out the answer. So I have a crosstab of the 2 question types that I asked about this concept. And 79% said yes on the dichotomous yes-no question, but it got a little murkier with the Likert scale. In that instance, you had 71 saying at least half the time or more. Now, the qualitative data didn't help explain this principle further because George didn't use on-screen text in his video, and 2 others were explaining assignments, so they didn't use images. And the visuals and text together were extremely limited in the other 2 videos. So my key takeaway for you is that if you're going to use images and text in combination, that you keep them close to each other. And my bonus takeaway is I think instructors need to consider using more images when they make videos. So related to the spatial principle, the temporal contiguity principle is when images appear at the same time as they're being discussed by the narrator. So image appears as the narrator is talking about it. So again, I ask you, the audience, what percentage of instructors were incorporating this spoken audio at the same time as the related image? So take your guess percentage-wise, throw that out in the chat there, and let's take a look. As you can see in this graph, with most of the responses are pushed towards the right. You have about 75% of the instructors self-reporting that they were incorporating spoken audio at the same time as related images in more than half their videos. Now, a common technique discussed by the interviewees was to show an image or graphic and then talk about it, which is exactly what I'm doing. And it's also your key takeaway. If you have an image, and I hope you do, when it comes up on screen, talk about it. That's also going to help you with the coherence principle and staying focused, talking about only what's needed to meet the learning objective. So there you have it. Those are the 5 CTML design principles for the extraneous cognitive load. So just to recap those again, with those key takeaways. For coherence, don't use music. Be concise via editing and formulas. For signaling, add some signals. Redundancy, do not read on-screen text. Spatial contiguity, when you use images or graphics, keep them close to associated text. And with temporal contiguity, when you show an image or graphic, talk about it. If you can do those things, you'll go a long way to meeting these 5 design principles. So let's get into essential cognitive load now. And the first principle there is called pre-training. This principle states that prior to their viewing of a multimedia product, instructors should provide terms and definitions of key concepts for learners. Pre-training is a challenging design principle to investigate because it does not directly relate to the video itself. Instead, pre-training concerns the instructional context of the video. What percentage of instructors indicated that they did teach students general concepts of or key vocabulary found in the video before students watched the video? Go ahead and enter your response in the chat now, your percentage guess. So 67% said they were applying the principle. But what was interesting is that none of the 5 instructors that I interviewed explicitly stated that they taught general concepts or vocabulary prior to having students watch their video, even when I asked what students did before they watched the video. I did pick up on 2 themes, though. First, the pedagogical approach. So if you take an approach where you provide students with choice in how they can move through the content in a week, you're going to create a scenario where students might skip right to the video and bypass the pre-training. The other thing that is related but slightly different is the way that you structure your course. Does your course have the opportunity for pre-training before a video, right? If your first student action is watch the video, then the structure is not there in your course for pre-training to occur. So my key takeaway for you is ensure that key vocabulary is defined before students view a video. Next principle, the modality principle, is when words are presented as spoken narration rather than on-screen text in a multimedia product. Pretty straightforward. So again, I ask you, what percentage of instructors were doing that? But before I can ask that question, I really have to ask, what percentage of videos had audio narration? So percentage for the videos that had audio narration, 97%. Instructors are using narration to convey information, and they're doing that robustly. But it appears they're also using a significant amount of on-screen text. So if we go over to this table, the evidence from the video artifacts of those 5 interviewees really undercut the survey findings. Only George's video, which again, no on-screen text because he's doing that field video, could be considered as fully applying the modality principle. 2 of the interviewees had 100% of their video with text-based information, while another had 82%. So given that strong mismatch between data sources, the application of this principle remains unclear. The next principle in this area is segmenting. And the segmenting principle states that it's better to break a multimedia product into user-controlled parts. Because content can be contextual, I went with an approach of using time to measure this principle. When looking at the research literature, there were some key times that emerged. First, in an ideal world, you'd be keeping videos to under 3 minutes. However, given that content in higher ed is often difficult to do. So to kind of maximize that relationship between investment of time to create and maximizing student viewing, the idea is to try and keep your videos under 6 minutes. That seems to be the best. You can convey a lot in 6 minutes. If you do feel that you have to take longer, the real kind of hard deadline you should consider is 15 minutes. Really try hard not to go past 15 minutes. The Quality Matters organization has set that as their upper bounds for video when reviewing a course design for course quality. And I'd ask you to consider TV shows and how you rarely see a segment of a show that's longer than 15 minutes. And that's done for a reason. And that is the cultural context in which you are operating. So with all that in mind, how many faculty reported that they had their best video was 6 minutes or less? And here we go. It was only 19%. So clearly we collectively have some work to do in this area. As you can see, the average time is above the research recommended maximum of 15 minutes. However, the median is under. So I interpret this as most faculty are meeting the goal while some are really missing the mark. So 2 themes emerged from the interviewees again that can help instructors in that 38% work on reducing the length of future videos they create. One idea was intentionally chunking content into shorter videos, and the other was imposing a time limit on oneself, saying, I'm going to keep this video to 6 minutes long before they start creating it. So we have chunking and setting a time limit. And there you have it. Those are the 3 CTML design principles for essential cognitive load. So just to review: pre-training, define those key concepts before video; modality, use the spoken word more often than words on a screen; and segmenting, keep your videos short by setting a time limit for yourself. Last 3 principles. So the personalization principle is when the video narrator uses a conversational talking style. Take a guess in the chat there, what percentage of instructors were doing this? 93%, very robust. No issue here, really. Next principle, personalization. Sorry, not next principle, my bad. It's, let's explain personalization a little bit. 2 things, use the pronouns, you, we, me, and I. That helps you stay personalized. And then the interviewees also thought about their video as a conversation with their students. And that may take a little practice as you get more comfortable with creating video. Now we're on the second principle, embodiment. This is the use of natural human gestures in the video. And the way I got at this is asking, is the narrator physically present in some way in the video image? So what percentage do you think? It was 49%. Only about half of instructors are actually showing up physically in their video. That lower number is because many people are uncomfortable seeing themselves on the screen. And interviewees did indicate that it gets better with experience. So as you start creating video, more people get over that uncomfortableness. The key takeaway, I think, for you, though, is be a video star. Be physically present in some way in your video, even if it's just for a little bit at the beginning to say, hey, hi, welcome, I'm excited you're here. And then you go into your slides. Just that little bit really matters. The final principle is about the use of natural human voice as opposed to computerized voice. And I will say here that all but one instructor said they were doing that. And the one instructor that didn't indicate they were doing that, it said that they were using both human and computerized voice. 3 themes came out of that. Again, I mentioned this, but instructors are narrating their own videos and they're doing that robustly, which is great. That they saw these videos as a form of relationship building with students. and that they really try to put some emphasis on speaking with expression, which I hope you've heard me doing a little bit here and throughout this recording. So those are the 3 CTML design principles for germane cognitive load. Personalization, speak as if you're speaking to your students. Embodiment, be a video star, be in your video. And voice, use a human voice, use your voice or other human voices when you create your video. So if I charted the data that I've been referencing throughout the presentation in the order we went, you can see here which principles could use some further attention. And if I reorder these items from best to worst, it looks like this. At the bottom, you see where work to improve will have a strong benefit. Remember too, that modality was the one that may not be as strong as the survey results indicate, but it's also connected with the idea of redundancy, which is already down there in the improvement area. So if those 11 takeaways are too much, how about just 5 of them that encapsulate a lot of what I was discussing? That first suggestion, again, is be a video star. Be in your video as a narrator and on camera using natural human gestures. Then add in some signals to highlight important information. As you're creating, check your text to ensure that you have as little as possible on the screen. Next, account for time by setting that time limit for yourself, both in the recording process, but also in the editing process, right? That 1 hour and 48 minutes, you want to try not to spend so much time on these videos. And finally, it's not really the tool, right? Identify the tools available to you, get comfortable using them, learn how to use them, and then apply those design principles as you create. You can apply these concepts really with any set of tools. Now, to conclude, I do want to take a moment and take it back to why we're making these videos in the first place. One of my sub-research questions asked why instructors choose to focus on certain components when they're making video. And the answer overwhelmingly was because of the students. And what you see on the screen are 4 themes related to the idea of student focus. And I'll reference an idea from 4 of the interviewees to acknowledge this focus and also honor their contribution to this effort. Bertha said, I try to keep in mind that for the students that might be listening to these lectures while they're at work, in the dish room, because these are a lot of nutrition students. They could have their earbuds in and their phone going, and they're listening to the lectures while they're working. So that was Bertha visualizing her students as she created her videos. Christine said, Christine's reason that she tries to let her personality come forth is that the lack of student-to-student interaction in the asynchronous learning can be very isolating, and that's not good for students. For her, that's one of the reasons why she believes that the instructor should be visible in the videos. It's about that connection. Tessa expressed a desire for the videos that she creates to be beneficial to the students, beneficial in terms of length, content interest, and slide design. She's trying to respect her students' time and effort by putting forth a quality product. And Tiana specifically asks students after the first video in her course for feedback on what to change for future videos, and then makes those adjustments throughout the rest of the semester based on that feedback. So there you have it, folks, those 4 student-focused themes. So making these changes isn't just about better learning outcomes. It's also a way to remain student-focused, to be human, and to demonstrate your care and commitment to student success. So my charge or challenge to you is to consider how you can focus on improving your application of at least one of these 11 principles as you make future instructional videos. Thank you for your time and attention. I'm going to open it up to questions now. And my slide deck includes the references that support some of the content that I covered today. Thank you.